Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not going to talk about architecture, or let's say not really about architecture. What I want to talk about today is actually three words that, if you look them up in etymology, have the same root. And this is quite interesting: middles, means, and mind. And I don't think you are able to make a combination between them. I'm going to try it. And I'm going to start off with a little riddle I heard when I was in kindergarten. I was something like 4 or 5 years old. And another boy asked me, how far can you walk into a forest? It's a ridiculous question, but it's a very logical answer in terms of language. It is till the middle, and then you walk out again. Interesting about it is that it's an experience of an act of mental creativity that is taking place there. It's a kind of witty jump, you could call it, with this idea of middle. At the same moment, this forest in the riddle could also be an ocean, it could be a desert or something like that, also incorporates our idea of the fear for the unknown. So what you have to do is to overcome this is you invent the middle, you don't know if it exists, but somehow you're going to reach it to overcome it. And this is this kind of very strange idea of the middle that starts to come out. At the same moment now, the middle becomes a means. In English, means, you have three explanations for it. One, it could indicate, like, I mean, something you have in mind. A means could be a medium that you are using to achieve a goal, or mean could be somebody that is very selfish. So also in all explorations, you have this kind of middle and means. Christopher Columbus even used this, since at a certain moment his men were at the point of mutiny. He said, we are over the middle, so it takes longer to go back. Since they didn't reach America yet, they didn't have this kind of fantastic physical machines, so the men couldn't go back on their own at that moment. But always remember that the act of creation always deals with this taking an expedition, going into the unknown. Biggest mistake we always make, however, is that creativity is generated by a kind of boundless freedom. That's wrong. You always need, to generate creativity, you need bounds, you need a border. We can see that in the myth of Daedalus, who has to flee his own creation, more two-dimensional, by third dimension, flying out of the system. Greek mythology, Daedalus also stands for the faculty of creation. And that's quite interesting because his family tree tells us what creation is about. His father was a guy by the name of Metion, meaning metis, mind. He himself was named Daedalus, referring to Daedal, meaning skillful and cunning. And then his son was the first test pilot we have. So it's thinking, making, and testing. Also, you have in Greek mythology 3 expressions for creativity. One is poiesis, the more mental way of creating, the techne, the more physical way of creating, and then the praxis. We always forget that, the more dealing with experiencing, that form of creation. Our problem that school kills creativity is that we don't value these 3 aspects of creativity equal anymore. We go very much for the mind, for thinking, and for theory. And that is where the biggest difficulty is. It's, however, again, it's a Greek, Plato, who introduced this kind of almost moralistic shift that we are dealing with. It's the kind of eternal ideas that he is thinking about, he's propagating as being more important than the other ones. Let me ask you a question. Who of you knows how to cycle? Who of you learned it theoretically? Okay, I think we know enough. The reason why Plato went to that is, and I can explain it, he didn't know what a bicycle was about, he didn't know how to ride a bicycle, even not a monocycle. You could almost fly in this machine, and it would have been ideal for him to go to his school, since that was something he knew something about. He knew still what the school was about. And that's something we forgot today. The school of Plato, later it's called the Academia, very famous place, actually was a park. We would call it a jogging park at this moment. It was dedicated to the Athenians by an Athenian hero called Academus. And he intended it to be a place to do gymnastics. So Plato went there, and probably he even listened to Socrates, who was 40 years older. School was, as a little bit like the American architect Louis Kahn would say, he imagined a tree with an old man sitting under it, telling stories. The old man didn't know he was a teacher. The people listening didn't know they were students. And it could have been that they were saying to each other, it would be nice that our children could come to a park like that, sit under a tree, or listen to a man like that, maybe Plato, talking about Atlantis. The academy, or better to say the school, in Greek it's schole, actually means nothing else than leisure and amusement. So you have to imagine, school means leisure and amusement, nothing else. It's only later that we start to deal with that in terms of a place of instruction. The same counts for theory. Theory actually comes from seeing, theos. A theoros was actually a kind of ambassador, a spy that was sent out by the city-states to look at other places, look at festivals and so on, and then report back. And this is very strange because it's a very subjective thing. It's abstracted in language or in maps, as you can see. And this was also one of those elements that Plato experienced. You know, Plato was the guy that told you the stories about Atlantis, but he also heard them of other people. That's why we still can't find the place anymore. But this is also where it becomes very interesting, because there is a kind of strangeness in this kind of way that we are dealing with maps, with theories, and so on. They become creative in themselves anymore. And this is also one of those things you could see in old maps, people or animals being drawn there. They were absolutely like imaginary things coming up. There's even a science of what you could call imaginary solutions. It's called pataphysics, invented by a French guy, Alfred Jarry, in the beginning of the 20th century. This was also the time in which bicycle builders were actually inventing the airplane. So what we have to deal with is the science of wit and wits. Think about wit and wits. They come from wisdom. That's where they come from. So to be or not to be creative by all, hand, mind, and experience carved into our brains, that's the question here. Thank you very much.